Hey friends, what's up? Welcome or welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about all things slow living. So I wanted to do this video because I wanted to reintroduce myself to some new people who have joined the channel. If you are new, hi, welcome. I appreciate you so much for being here. And yeah, I wanted to also address that there are two categories of people that are on my channel. There are people that are really interested in my tech videos, my Google Pixel videos, and you're probably seeing all of my other content and wondering, what the heck is slow living? So I wanted to answer that question for you today. And then the other group of people, of course, the people who are very interested in my slow living content, and I just wanted to provide some more slow living content. So we're just going to be talking about what slow living is, why I decided to live a slower life, why it's important to me, and how you can implement it into your life as well. So let's get right into it. Okay, starting things off with a definition. I looked this up on Google. The definition that comes up as the first option is slow living is a lifestyle which encourages a slower approach to aspects of everyday life involving completing tasks at a leisurely pace. So if we look at that definition, it's pretty straightforward. Slow living equals living slower, and at the very base of it, that's exactly what it is. But there have been different adaptations and interpretations of what slow living means to different people. There has been a very traditional sense of what slow living is. You could probably see that on Instagram. There's very aesthetic looking kinds of videos and photos of that kind of lifestyle. But I take a little bit more of a unique approach to it, at least I think so. And I'm starting to see more of this unique / modern approach to it grow in popularity online, which I'm really glad to see because that makes it more accessible, and I'm all about accessibility. So yeah, it all depends on the way that you interpret what slow living means to you, but at the very base of it, it is definitely just living a slower life. So why did I make the decision to start living a slower life? Long story short, I have been craving living a slower life for a very long time, longer than I even anticipated myself. It wasn't until I looked back into the archives of my content that I realized, oh, I was craving this for a really long time, almost around my college years, actually. If you didn't know, I'm originally from New York City. I was born there, raised there, I lived there my entire life, never moved anywhere, never lived anywhere up until right now. Always been a New York City girl. And New York City is known for being the fastest paced city in the United States. So it goes without saying that it's constant hustle and bustle. It's constant noise. It's always fast. There's no pause button. You don't even get an opportunity to pause in your own personal life because that is just the way life is in New York City. And this is not to bash New York City at all. I love New York. I have a really strange love-hate relationship with New York, being a New Yorker, but it's really hard to be able to maintain a slower or mindful life living in the midst of so much hustle, to a point where it almost feels impossible. And I'll say almost because it's not impossible, and I'll give you tips on how to make it not impossible. I think particularly me as a New Yorker, just my attachment and my identity closeness to New York City made it particularly impossible. But yeah, I was just craving it for a really long time. And I've noticed it when I was looking back at my archives that there were little moments where I would talk about slow living, but I didn't necessarily say slow living, but it was in the wording that I was saying. It was in the mindset that I was in while I was living in New York. And there were, right before I moved out of New York City, which spoiler alert, I don't live in New York City anymore. I was coming to a point where I was having a bit of a mental breakdown. I was desperate for a break. I was desperate for a pause. If you can sort of visualize or think about how I was feeling at the time, it felt like a nonstop burnout. I felt like I was burnt out for 26 years. It's a strange feeling because obviously burnout is so bad. But if that's just what your life feels like, then that's just what you know, and that's what you're comfortable with, and you don't realize it until you distance yourself away from it. So there would be times where I would leave New York City for the summer and go spend it in another state, or if I went to like a very remote area, I would start to notice that there was some reflecting going on internally, and there was some internal work going on there, and I would just notice that like this was something that I was craving and wanting for such a long time. And so I had it. I ended up moving out of New York City. I repeat, this is not a bashing on New York City. This was just, you know, where I was mentally and what I was dealing with internally at this time in my life. And so I moved out of New York City just under 2 years ago. I now live just outside of New York City. I live in New Jersey in a more suburban area. And since then, I have been able to apply what I've really, really wanted to when it comes to slow living and practices and mindset and just day-to-day daily habits and stuff like that. And it has definitely improved my life. So that's the decision. Long story short, I was just really craving it, and I always have been. And it was something that I needed as someone who has lived such a fast-paced life their entire life. So I think I sort of hinted at why it's so important for me to be living a slower life. I feel like I wasn't 100% as a person, and I really needed to have that pause button. I really needed to stop, reflect, and I needed to do a lot of work, a lot of internal work. I needed to go through my traumas. I needed to heal. I needed to grow. I needed to improve. I needed to get rid of toxic traits. If you didn't know, and I don't think anybody knows this unless you're in my personal life, I was once a very, very aggressive, highly opinionated, mean, shutting out people type of person. And I'm still working on it, but I was really not the best person. And I wasn't able to stop and reflect and improve as a person and get rid of those traits until I started really looking at life in a different perspective, in this slow living perspective. And now I feel like I've made huge improvements, and I've actually spoken to people in my life where they've said like, yeah, you have become a much more chill person. You've kind of scaled back on all of those toxic traits and stuff like that. And I'm always working on it, but I desperately needed this in order to do a lot of healing work. And of course, this is not the sole reason why it's important. I know a therapist would probably help me dissect these issues a lot more, but it was just really important for me to take a break, one, to take that pause that I was never able to do internal work. That's the second thing, to do that internal work and improve as a person and start to shift my mindset, shift my perspective. And 3, start to learn what really makes me happy, what brings me joy, what little things in my day-to-day are actually really fulfilling to me, and what things don't matter to me. Like, what are the things that I left in New York City? What are the things that I valued in hustle culture and those kinds of things that are not actually important to me? It was just part of my day-to-day because that was just the life that I was living. So many things, and these are big things. It's ironic because if we look at the definition that I shared with you, that is so bare bones, very simplistic, and it is simplistic, but these tiny little changes that you can make from living a slow lifestyle can make such a huge impact. It has literally changed my life. And I know that sounds dramatic, but again, I have seen proof in having conversations with people in my life, in my personal life, that have said like, you've changed, and you've changed for the better. I take that as actual proof that this lifestyle is great for me. It's a positive thing for me, and it's important for me to continue on this journey. I hope I didn't get too philosophical there. Again, a lot of these things could probably be hashed out in a therapy session for sure, but I hope I got to the point there that something as simple as living a slower life can have such a major impact as to helping you improve and grow as a human being. So when I say that I've adapted this into my lifestyle, what I'm basically saying is that I'm not super traditionalist when it comes to slow living. Like I said, you can go on Instagram and check it out, but I am not homesteading. I don't live off the land. I don't have farmland and stuff like that, which is like the very traditional sense of slow living and stuff like that. I'm somewhere in between, I think. I'm in between my city girl life, and I'm in between that like living off the land kind of life, because I moved out into the suburbs. I'm living a literal quieter life. I'm not in the midst of a major city, so it is super, super quiet, and I am able to emphasize and prioritize small, romanticized little things in my life and make those things a priority and my self-growth a priority, but at the same time, I'm not necessarily living off the land. Getting close to that though. I have a goal of having a garden in my backyard, like a massive garden in my backyard. At the end of the day, I'm just an average woman who likes all the things that women like. I like hanging out with friends. I like going out to the bars and restaurants and stuff like that, which is like very part of my city life, but I also like to disassociate, and I like to be by myself, and I like to live off of this space that I've purchased, this house that I've purchased, and I do want to live off the land. I do want to live off my own land and stuff like that. So I try to implement both sides so that I can have sort of like the best of both worlds, and that's what is most valuable to me. So I feel like in that sense, it should be super accessible for anybody. I feel like if you're living in the middle of the city, like I said, it's not impossible. If you're living in the middle of the city and you want to live a slower lifestyle, I feel like there should be accessibility for you to be able to live a slower lifestyle just as much as somebody that's living out and homesteading and stuff like that, or like me who's out in the suburbs. I try to emphasize that small things, even if it's the smallest thing, can be impactful in your slow living journey, and I think that's what makes it super accessible, because you don't need to purchase a house. You don't need to buy 10 chickens and, you know, raise these chickens. You don't need to build a garden and stuff like that. You just need to find the value and the joy in little things, no matter what it is, and you can live a slower life. Your slower life could be a little bit faster than mine. My slower life is definitely faster than somebody who's like living out super remotely and stuff like that. But the point is that it's accessible for everyone. So if you do want to adapt this lifestyle for yourself, if this is something that's important to you, and I think it is, if you're watching this video and you're subscribed to my channel, just continue to watch my content, continue to watch my content on Instagram, TikTok, and here. I try to share as much as I possibly can, tips, tricks. I also have a newsletter and stuff like that. It's not just to say like, oh my gosh, follow me and follow my content, but I really am trying to make this space as accessible as possible for people, and I just want to spread that positivity because it has made such a huge positive impact in my life, and I want to share that with other people. So if you're interested in all of that good stuff, feel free to stick around, but that is all for this week's video. Thank you so much for being here and listening to me talk about slow living and how important it is for me. I hope it's also important for you, or you're learning that it's important for you. I am here for you. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will talk to you in next week's video.